Episode 17 of the HigherUp podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smoke, or HigherUp Wellness on various social media outlets, and it's been a while, and I'm sorry for that. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate those of you who have checked up on me and wondered where the next episode was coming from or when it was coming. It really does mean a lot to me, to those of you that tune into the podcast, because it's a small audience, but I put a lot of work into these, and it's much more difficult than creating a 90-second TikTok or Instagram video. So to the small but awesome group of folks that tune into this podcast, I want you to know how much I appreciate you both for listening and watching, but also just checking in on me because it's been about 3 weeks since I published an episode. But I'm back in the saddle despite having to deal with some stuff in the personal life. I'm ready to lock back in and get to work. And I finally feel again like I have something to say and something to share. And that was one of the things that I struggled with the last few weeks because I don't want to just put out content for the sake of putting out content to feed my algorithm or boost my engagement. That's not what it's about to me. I said a long time ago, when I feel like I no longer have anything to say, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop creating content. And for a couple of weeks, I didn't really feel like I had much to say. And it's just been this week that I felt like I had something that was maybe worth sharing or that some of you maybe needed to hear, because I've been leaning on it in the last few weeks and it's proven to be tremendously helpful to me. So in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you 4 quotes that I've heard in the last week and a half that have been remarkably profound at giving me something to lean on through challenging and trying times. And if you're going through something in your life currently, or maybe you inevitably will, rather, you can lean on these perspectives. So before I get started, I do want to quickly say that this episode is brought to you by LaCroix. No, I'm just kidding. I wish. Oh my God. If LaCroix sponsors me, that will be absolute peak. I could retire right there, a happy man. But on a more serious note, I do want to say briefly that I have a community. I've mentioned it in other episodes. It's called the HigherUp Lifestyle. We're 200 members strong now. If you're interested in joining, the link will be in the bio of my Instagram or my TikTok page. You can hop in. It's a whopping $7 a month, and there's a ton of value and motivation and accountability in that community. I believe we either go fast alone or go far together. So I've tried to build a place where people can get together and encourage one another, but I also have some exclusive content and value in that community that I don't post anywhere else, as well as weekly live streams. So I look forward to seeing you there. If you're interested, again, the link will be in my Instagram or TikTok. If you're interested in booking a coaching call, the link for that will also be in my Instagram and TikTok bio. Now, without further ado, let's get into the episode. I don't know how long this will be. I don't have notes laid out in front of me. As you can tell, I have the quotes written on my phone, and I'm just going to speak from the heart about what I feel in the moment as to why these were so profound to me and why I wanted to share them with you. So let's get into it. I want you to know that I found 3 of these 4 quotes from the Theo Von This Past Weekend podcast, which is the last place I expected to see anything of meaning because he's a goober. I know he's a smart guy, but he's very goofy. But lately, I've been just getting into his podcast, and he is beginning to, in my opinion, rival Joe Rogan as an elite interviewer and elite obtainer of guests. And I saw that he interviewed Tony Robbins. For those of you who don't know who Tony Robbins is, he's one of the most, if not the most successful motivational speaker of all time. He's changed millions of lives. He does webinars and seminars with millions of people in attendance. He did a webinar with every person. Every country in the world had at least one person attending that virtual webinar at the time it was going on. Pretty remarkable. But he's an incredible guy who's been through tremendous hardship and challenge in his life and came out the other side a hell of a man. And I don't know a lot about him. I haven't looked into him, ironically, with all the self-help stuff I look into, but this conversation was incredible. It was very vulnerable on Theo Von's part because he has some issues and trauma, and they had a really great conversation, and I felt compelled to listen to it, and I did. And these are the notes that I gathered from that episode, of the quotes, rather. The first one is profound to me because it's amazing to hear someone at the level that Tony Robbins is discuss this concept, which he quickly said just in passing in a conversation, but I rewound it quite a few times with Theo. He said, remember, complexity is the enemy of execution. Complexity is the enemy of execution essentially means if it's too hard or too difficult or too complex to do, you're not going to do it. And it's why I always say it isn't easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. All of that is very important. It is not easy to get fit forever. It is not easy to change your mindset, but the principles are simple and you know what they are. So don't go painting birds in your picture that don't need to be there. Don't go overcomplicating the scenario or situation. Complexity is the enemy of execution. And when you see hyper successful individuals or people that emulate a lifestyle or mindset that you truly want to embody, you realize they all feel that way. None of them say, I like to take on really complex situations and I like to make things as difficult as possible. No, they rather say, I like to boil a situation down to its purest, simplest form and execute from there. Now, I know I talk about doing ultra marathons and lifting hard and training to failure, and that is difficult in essence. But the principles I take to get there are simple. I'm all about embodying and adopting things that are as simple as possible into my routine because I know me as a person. And if it's complex, I'm not going to adhere to it. Complexity in a situation always negatively impacts my adherence. And this is the case for most people. We don't like doing things that we have to think too much, too long, or too far about. So if you're having a hard time getting where you want to be in your fitness or your business or your relationships, think about what is the simplest way I can boil down these situations. If I can get this down to the essence or the root of what I'm trying to do, I can build a clear path and plan to get there. It's sort of like the quote that James Clear says in his book, Atomic Habits. We don't rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the levels of our systems. You can have a big, lofty, seemingly complex goal, but your systems to get there have to be devastatingly simple, as in just about anybody could do it. An example of this in practicality when it comes to fitness for me is the 10-minute post-meal walk. So for me, that is something that is low friction, devastatingly simple. 99% of people could do it, assuming you're able-bodied and you can walk. And it's a massive payoff. And I know my adherence to that can be high because I know I have 10 minutes 2 or 3 times a day. So that's an example of a habit that is the lowest barrier to entry you could possibly have with one of the highest ROIs as a task. In business, it might be simply living and dying by your calendar. This is something I've adopted that's remarkably simple. As soon as I have a task, I take 2 seconds and I go put it on my Google Calendar. Because if I don't put it on my fucking calendar, I'm going to forget it. I always used to tell this lie to myself of, I'll remember. You won't, I won't, and you won't. So take a minute and either write it down, set an iPhone reminder, or put in your calendar. My days have been remarkably more productive when I have simply put every little detail of my day in a calendar, from meals to meetings to haircuts to extracurriculars to walks. Blocking my day by a calendar is one of the simplest things I've done for my business that has created massive ROI in my organization and my productivity. So I'm sharing these examples with you to show you that neither of those principles in the fitness or the business side are complex, but that means they're easy to execute repeatedly. So complexity is the enemy of execution. And I've had to be devastatingly simple in my approach to fitness lately because of all the things I have going on in my personal life. I'm dealing with a lot of challenges, and I can't have fitness be something I'm thinking too hard about because I just don't have the mental energy for it. I need to be idiot proof so I can just walk in and execute. So I've become militant about writing my training out for the week, not doing more or less than I have written down, so that when I walk in, I can just enter a flow state, start training, and get the hell out of there, whether it's my runs or my lifts for the week. So that's quote number one. The second one is interesting, mainly because it's interesting who said it. I found it funny, and they shared a laugh about it when Tony Robbins said it. It is, if you tell a lie big enough, loud enough, and long enough, eventually people will believe you. Now, he pauses for a moment and he says, I want you to guess who said that. And Theo didn't have a guess, and he said Hitler, which it's dark. I'm not going to get too much into the context. It's just ironic. That's such a profound quote. And that guy told a lot of big, loud lies for a long time and got a lot of people to follow him. But the reason I think it's important, the reason he was talking about it, is you need to be careful what you say about yourself to others and in your own internal dialogue. Because if you tell a lie, big enough, loud enough, and long enough, eventually people will believe it, or it will even start to be true. So I tend to position this and look at it as a superpower. If I tell myself what are alleged lies about myself right now, eventually that becomes my new identity, good or bad. So I would use this as a way to improve my image around my fitness. For example, you've probably seen the video of me talking about how I don't believe I can binge eat. I don't believe it's possible for me because in my reality, it doesn't exist. Now, I struggled with binge eating for a while. So at first, was I saying that to myself as a lie? Yeah, I was borderline gaslighting myself. But I believe that to a degree, we create our reality, and our perception is our reality. So while it may not be objectively true that I can't overconsume junk food, words give things power, and I'm very careful about that. I'm very intentional about the word choice I use. So when I started telling myself, I don't believe I can binge eat, shockingly enough, over time, I started binge eating less because in my reality, it didn't exist. I genuinely just had days where I didn't overconsume. I remember there was a time when every Saturday and Sunday was binge drink and binge eat. And once I started telling myself repeatedly, you don't do that. That's just not something that exists for you. It's not possible. Thoughts become things, and neurons that fire together wire together. And I began to believe that truly and stopped having the urge to binge eat, which sounds incredible and ridiculous and absurd, but maybe that's the point. Maybe we just have to gaslight ourselves a little bit into believing something to be true enough that eventually it is. I told all my friends I was going to run a marathon in less than 4 hours. I had no idea if I was going to be able to do it. But you know what? I fucking did that shit. And I believe it was a lot because I painted myself into that corner of, I have to do this. I'm telling people this. And while it may be a lie right now, and I've never run more than 10 miles, it can't be a lie come race day. That makes it real. Speaking it out, telling it as a lie, maybe at first makes it real until you can make it a part of your truth, your identity, and your reality. But on the flip side of that, if you continuously work with negative self-talk, I don't believe I can do this. I don't believe I can lose the 50 pounds, the 15 pounds. I don't believe I can get shredded. I don't believe I can build muscle. Whether you think you can or can't, you are right. The difference is in your thought. It is in how you perceive yourself in the world around you. So stop that negative self-talk. It's simply not necessary. And you would be amazed at what you can achieve if you just gaslight yourself a little bit into believing that you can do more. Eventually, it will become your reality. Now, I'm not going to speak on manifestation and all that woo woo rah rah stuff, but I do believe that calling things out into the universe makes them all the more real. Writing it down makes it even more real. Please refer to the episode on goal setting that I put out a couple of weeks ago if you want me to expand more on that principle. But thoughts become things. So be careful about the words that you choose to describe yourself to others and inside your own head. Quote number 3 sort of plays into what I mentioned just a second ago in the second quote. And I thought this was remarkable. Tony Robbins said to Theo in this episode, people don't experience life. They experience a life that they focus on. And the example that he guides Theo through in this conversation is, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to, when I say open them, try to find everything red in the room that you can. You have 5 seconds and then I want you to close your eyes again. So he has Theo do that. Open your eyes. Look around. Okay, shut them. How many red things did you see? And he said a lot. And he said, I bet you also saw some beige shit that you called red, but it really ain't red, but you needed it to be red for your own mental acuity because that's what I told you to do. The point is, when you look for things in your reality to focus on or confirm your beliefs, you will do that. That is, we are flawed as humans. So if you believe you are consistently depressed or we believe we are unable to do something, you will look for things to affirm that statement and create and curate that reality for you. So while it sounds oversimplified or maybe easier said than done, why not focus on things that bring you peace, that bring you gratitude, that bring you joy, excitement, energy, invigoration, that make you want to live? I have adopted this very simple mentality shift even in the last few days, and I've started feeling a lot better. And it's simply a result of focusing on the things in my life that are incredible. You know, having people that love me, having a job like this that I get to do. I don't have to do this. I truly get to do this. And focusing on this and being locked in this moment right now with you guys on the other end of the camera, though I'm in the room by myself, is bringing me a lot of joy. And it's lighting the fire in me again to feel like I have something to say. And so we don't create or we don't experience life. We experience the life that we focus on. So if you're constantly focusing on what the fuck is going wrong in your life, you're going to be miserable. If you're constantly focused on the fact that you don't think you can do the 50-pound weight loss journey or build your own business, that's going to become your reality. If you start looking for red, you're going to find red and you're going to find some beige shit to justify that, that's close enough to red. So focus on the stuff that makes you happy. Find the blue and the green shit in your life because it will make things tremendously better. Okay. 3 people can have the exact same day. Me and you and one of your friends can have the exact same day and yet experience it completely different based on what we choose to put our energy into focusing on. So tomorrow when you wake up, if you've been struggling with focusing on the negative in your life, I want you to make the intentional effort, whether it comes from a journal or positive affirmations or just walking around and looking at different things and interacting with people in a different way. Focus on all the good in your life and all that you have to be grateful for. It will literally rewire your brain. There is science to back that it can rewire all of your neurological thinking if you just focus on gratitude. So I thought that was a banger of a quote. Tony Robbins is kind of full of bangers of quotes. This is the last quote, and this is going to be a little bit shorter of an episode, and I apologize for that because I've been gone for a long time, but I'm not going to drag it out and yap longer than I have to. This is not from Tony Robbins. This is actually from my good friend Colin Beecham. This past week, Colin and I went to dinner at a steakhouse in Atlanta, and for those of you who hadn't heard me talk about Colin before, Colin has done some pretty remarkable things in the way of endurance. He's a rock solid dude all around, but he has done a 50K, which is 31 miles. He's done a 50-mile race. He has done a 100-mile ultra marathon. He has done, I think, a couple of marathons, and he's done an Ironman. So he's run the gamut of endurance events. And the endurance event, the 100-mile race that he ran, was the Georgia Jewel. It is a gnarly race here in Georgia on what's called the Pinhoti Trail. It's 100 miles. It took him 29 hours, and there's 16,000 feet, I believe, of elevation gain. So it's over half the height of Everest in elevation gain over 100 miles. And it is an absolute bear of 100 milers, of a 100 miler. Not that all 100 milers aren't difficult, but he was journaling leading up to the event in the days to come. And the night before, he was very nervous. And he was like, I just journaled my experience with this, and I journaled how I was feeling. And he was talking about his nerves in the journal entry and what he was feeling the night before the race. And one of the things he wrote was that he found a podcast that day, and an individual on this podcast said this quote, and I'm clinging to it right now, as I mentioned, going through some trying times and some challenging stuff. It is, a man or woman can only free his soul by exhausting his body. And this was a quote that was said before we knew about the science behind the relationship between regular exercise and anxiety and depression and mental health outcomes being positive. But a man can only free his soul by exhausting his body. And that is profoundly true. That is profoundly true. Now we know now, obviously, that exercise increases levels of serotonin and dopamine and epinephrine. But in reality, if you don't want to focus on the science, you can't argue with the fact that you always feel better about life after a workout or a training session. And that's why this quote is so profound to me. And I've thought about it I'm getting chills talking about it right now. This is how much I care about this shit. I've thought about it every morning when I've woken up. For me, the last couple of weeks, yes, I'm training to run a 5-minute and 15-second mile. And yes, that's a big goal. I need to be locked into my training. But right now, going through turbulent times, training is an anchor. It is a time that is for me and only me. It is a time that I don't use headphones or listen to music. I simply pull myself into the present moment, and that no matter what I got going on or I'm going through, when I'm training, it's the only thing I'm thinking about. And so I implore you guys, if you can't love or learn to love training because of the physique outcomes or the health benefits, if you just don't really care about that, and that's okay, a lot of people don't, you need to view it as an anchor. That when life gets rough and choppy and uncertain, you have something to ground you, to anchor you to the present moment and take you and pull you out of all of life's chaoses. And it really has reminded me, though I always know that to be true, I'm even more so reminded and grateful of it when I'm going through tough stuff and I realize, you know, it would make this a lot easier if I just went outside, put my shoes on, and ran 10 miles. And every time I come back from a run, life's problems are a little bit easier to deal with. And sure, that's because of the neurotransmitters and the dopamine and the blah, blah, blah. But the point is, physical training is an anchor in my life, and I don't care who you are, you should view it the same way. You will not change my mind about this. Everybody would benefit from viewing physical activity as an anchor in their life because it is profound and it is something we are wired to do. We are wired to move. Anxiety is our body telling us to move either towards something or away from something else. That's a quote from Jordan Peterson. I didn't make that up. But every time I feel anxious, if I just get moving, I feel better. And if you're going through something challenging, if you're going through something difficult, I implore you to give this a shot, to view exercise as an opportunity to relieve your anxiety, to push that energy out of your body and into the universe or into the weights or into the pavement with a hard run. There's just really, really nothing like it. I think Andrew Huberman has a quote that says something to the effect of, and I don't want to butcher it, we need to do self-elected hard things so that when non-self-elected challenges of life arise, and they will, we can tell ourselves, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I know that I can do hard things. That's not a quote that was on my list, but it's something I think about a lot. The concept of doing hard things and challenging myself every day is something that has made me better equipped to handle life's turbulence and challenges because at a neurochemical level, our body recognizes stress or no stress. It doesn't necessarily know that the stress is coming from the fact that the bills are late, or that you just went through a breakup, or that your parents are sick, or that you're overweight and dying, or something to that effect. It recognizes cortisol, adrenaline, and stress or no stress. So you need to treat exercise as a way to change your relationship with stress. That's why I love cold water and sauna, because all of those neurotransmitters are dumped into my brain, and I can tell my body, this hurts. You think you're going to die. You're releasing chemicals that tell me, get out of the water, get out of the sauna, or we're going to die. But I'm going to sit here with this and I'm going to make you feel this, because I am not my thoughts and you are not my friend right now. I am training you. I am in control. I am the driver. I am not the passenger. So doing that on a regular basis has really allowed me to change my relationship with stress. It makes me feel comfortable, or more comfortable, sitting in life stresses when I do things like cold water, sauna, and intense exercise. And so, I just encourage you, if you've never viewed exercise from this lens, change the way you look at it, and it may just change for you. It's all about perspective. I know I probably say that quote once every other episode, but whatever. It's my show, and I love that quote, so I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's profound. So that's all I had to share with you guys for this episode back. I know it's a little bit short and choppy. It's been a while since I've recorded like this in front of a camera, so I apologize if it isn't as buttoned up as usual, but I just wanted to come on and speak like I wanted to be spoken to, and I wanted to speak to you guys. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your patience in letting me get back in the swing of things. I'm going to get back to a once weekly podcast release and hopefully a bi-weekly release of my YouTube vlogs. Go check those out if you haven't. But I'm grateful for each and every one of you more than you know, and I truly, truly mean that. I would not be able to live the life that I do or have the opportunities that I do if you didn't tune in and listen to me talk and share my inner dialogues with you. So thank you for being here. I would drop a step check, but actually I have my non-smartwatch on, but I'm so OCD that I kept my smartwatch in my pocket so it could track my steps because I have issues. So let's do a step check. Drop your step check in the comments. It is 12:11 Eastern Standard Time, and I am at 3,483 steps. So I have some work to do today. But go get your steps in, go get your sunlight, drink your water, and hit your protein goal. And remember, it isn't easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Have a great week, everybody.